Here it is, my ultimate lifetime chicken coop tractor. As many of you know, a chicken coop tractor allows you to move your chickens to new patches of grass and eat different bugs and forage for themselves and fertilize your lawn. There are many designs out there, and I looked at a lot of videos. Many people use a hoop, a cattle hoop, and cover it with tarp. A few things I didn't like about it. The cattle fence is not as structural. It wasn't designed for that. It needs a lot of reinforcement to make it solid. And then the tarp is eventually going to fail. People also make them out of conduit, and I tried various conduit configurations, and conduit is designed to protect electrical. It's not structural either. I ended up using some of the conduit I bought, but this is framed out of pressure treated wood. And I will go into all the design and build details. Notice how it's all on one plane here, so I can get the welded wire on there. I used pocket screws here. And this was the tricky part, and I think the innovative part. I used 4x4s in the corner, and I notched them this way and this way. Very simply, with just all saws. This piece is going to go here. The bottom one's going to go there, both 8-footers. Because I notched these, this baseboard is very strong because there's no notch in it. The notching happened here, and that board doesn't need to be so strong. And also, I drove my screws from the 1x1.5 inch thing into the 2-inch thing. So all the screws go that way, or pocket screws. So all screws go cross grain. So you don't basically want any screws going into the grain. You want cross grain. Here, I use pocket screws that go cross grain. And these are the screws I'm using. They're stainless steel, and they have a flat head so they don't sink in. I'm using 3-inch screws, and when you go through two 2x4s, you don't go through if you have that nice big flat head like that. And they are 3/16 stainless. I'll have the link in the description. This is the jig, the Craig jig that I use to drill the pocket screws. Basically, you just clamp it on there and put in your drill. And this is the drill you use. It's a step drill. So it drills the big one for the head and then the tiny one to get you started there with the pilot hole. This is the top detail. Again, a notch. We're very strong going this direction. And we're going cross grain with these stainless steel screws. All the wood is pressure treated. The front belt, I'm working on the sides, and I'm notching these boards. These are 3-foot boards, and they're going to go like that on the inside. And I've done 2. I know they're 3 feet. I know I'm taking out a 2x4, so I'm mass producing them here. So I've already done the top notch. So I've cut here and there. Now I'm just gonna cut off the last little bit. There we go. So these are gonna go right there on this side. Now I just have to make 2 more of these corner posts. So this is the most important thing. I'm gonna do one of these corners here for you. And this is a 3 feet, 36 inches. I'm clamping it to a surface here because I'm gonna be working on this top here. And this is what's key. The key is to get all your measurements right. So we want 1 2x4 to come here. So we need to mark this. We're going to be cutting out this piece. And we need to cut here. We're going to be cutting out this piece. This is going to go here. This is going to go here. And this piece here is actually 2x2. So this is the meaty part. This is what we're going to be screwing to. So this can be a little noisy. Now we've done this cut and this cut. We have to do these side cuts. I don't know if you saw my other video, but I built this bench, and one of the things I love about this bench is I put this little lip so I can clamp down on it. The clamps all fit here. There we go. So we want to remove this piece here. So I want to mark this. We're going to remove this piece. Now you could use one saw, but if you see, I'm using 3 saws. This saw is set to only saw an 1.5 inches deep. So it's going to be sawing the side here. If I had one saw, I'd always have to be adjusting it between full depth and 1.5 inches. Okay, we're almost there. Now for the third saw to finish off this cut. My saw is almost there. There we go. The clamp even came off by itself. That's what we want. This piece is going to go right here. And just have to do the same thing the other side and do the other one. Game is all done and ready for paint. It really only took about an hour to assemble it once everything was cut and notched. Notching didn't take that long because, again, I only used saws. There's the corner. So the bottom, which is a little bit of a mystery because I forgot, is 79 inches. One last minute thing, since I decided to overkill this, was I did buy a bunch of 4-inch screws, and I put those here, basically there. So in addition, I got screws there on the back side. This thing is a little bit over designed, but because it's movable, it's going to go over rough terrain, I wanted it to be as tough as possible. Now the back side I didn't finish because I'm going to build a nesting box there.
Volunteered to do the
I decided not to have a door on both sides. Chicken coop is progressing. I decided to make some changes. I was going to use conduit, but I decided it would be better just to frame it. I did have all that conduit, so I used it to make these cross braces. So just hammered it out flat, drilled a hole in it, and put a screw in it, so it gives a little bit more stability. And this is the frame detail. Used a hurricane strap. Yeah, okay, that's probably overkill too. And then the ridge beam is going to fit in that slot. Comes down, and I used 6-inch timber screws to secure this end. I finished the framing, got it upright. I'm pretty happy with the way it's turning out. Show some details. That's I lowered the door a little bit. I customized it to my wife's exact height. It did end up getting pretty heavy, so I'm gonna really have to think hard about how I wheel this thing. Got all the framing done. I made some mid-course correction. I was gonna do the entire upper frame with this conduit, 1/2-inch conduit, but I decided it was not a good idea, even though others on YouTube did it. The problem with conduit is it's not really a structural material. It's meant for protecting wiring. So I did what people do when they want to do framing. I used framing lumber. It's all 2x4s. Yes, it's a little bit heavier than if I use conduit, but I've got some ideas for wheel systems that should make it easy to move. So I've got the ridge beam, also 2x4 pressure treated. I notched it and dropped it in there. I made it a little taller. That's why I had the 2x4s under here. And I'm going to cover this with steel roofing. And then, since this is for hens, there's going to be a nesting box there. But the framing is done. I did make a few mistakes on my measurements, so I had to use a shim there, but it should be fine. I also used a big 6-inch timber screw here with a shim. That's it. Just need to prime and paint it, and then we'll put on the other components. I've been working on the door while my wife's been priming the additional framing members I added. So the door is made out of pressure treated 2x4s, but I ripped this one to make it lighter. So the beefy side is going to be on the hinge side. That one is 2 inches, and the 1.5 inch is going to be on the other side, because the hinge side takes more stress. The other thing I'm doing that is pretty optional, if you have a tool, you should do it, but I put dowels in here. In addition to the dowels, I also put some plywood corner brackets. So between that and the hardware cloth, it should be pretty rigid. I'm not going to add a beam in the center, but I might. Anyway, that's what the door is going to be. And while I was working on that, my wife finished priming. And there we go. Just need to build a nesting box and some pretty beefy wheels, because this thing is heavy. Finished the door. I decided to add a cross brace in the middle, just so it won't loop over time. And I'm starting to work on the nesting box. It's out here in the back. So a few things I wanted to point out before I finished is I have a slope here, so the rain will wash off the roof on that. And then I have another slope down here, which tapers off, and that's so the eggs will roll down. And then you don't have to do this, but I got a little fancy. I didn't want that plywood edge showing, so I'm notched out the pressure treated, so that's going to go there. And then I'll show you when I'm finished. I finally finished the nesting box. There's going to be welded wire on the bottom, and then the tin roof on the top. And this is going to be your access. And I put a slope to it so the eggs will roll down. And ready to prime this. I'm using 1/2-inch welded wire and putting it on the outside of the left half. I did make a design change again, mid course correction. I had this conduit, the only remaining conduit I was going to put as supports in the middle of this roof, but I decided to rip it out because this welded wire is so strong it has no problem spanning 4 feet. I attached it with 1.5-inch structural screws with 1/4-inch heads and stainless steel washers. So I only needed 9 fasteners here, and I'm going to do something tricky along the side. Next step, I'm attaching this 1/2-inch welded wire to the frame. This is a 32-inch by 48-inch square. I just make sure it's lined up. You can get it easily perpendicular by just lining up the wire with the edge. So what I'm doing is putting in 1.5-inch Simpson structural screws over here with a stainless fender washer. I really want to point out is I really like the fender washers over
Make sure it's all
using
even.
staples, because
This is the
staples,
critical side.
even if they're stainless, will weaken the fencing material when you pound it in. It'll break at that point where they contact. The fender washer spreads the force out over much more area. Close-up of the Simpson screw with the stainless washer. Then here, I did something tricky. I got these stainless clips and clipped them to the side. Did that there and on this side. And that's because my inside dimension was 48 inches and this wire is 48 inches. So I didn't have enough to overlap here. And it's all one continuous piece, just loops over and goes down. I'm going to be cutting this section right here, and I'm going to use this sheet metal cutter that I got from Amazon. I'll link to that too. But I'm cutting 75 inches here. Measure twice. Always wear safety glasses because this will shoot up these little pieces. So you can use shears if you want. It's just this is a lot easier and faster and does a really good job. And it removes some of this extra so it doesn't poke you. So it clips off about 1/4 inch and tosses it away, which you got to sweep up and not get in your eyes. The front screen is all done and the nesting box. What I'm doing is I weave this piece here together with this piece. So I got a flat piece here and then one coming up from the bottom, and I wove it together. So no predator can get in that way. Then I'm going to, of course, finish off that edge. This edge is already screwed in. Door side is now done. You can see that this stuff is tight as a drum. And I put on the self-closing hinge, little latch here. we go. Not much left. Just have to put on the metal roof. I'm going to eventually put wheels on this beast, but I thought in addition to the wheels, I'm going to make a sled of sorts, just in case I'm on wet grass and I just want to try to drag it with the tractor. So I'm using this edging, this plastic edging. Got 20 feet roll from Home Depot, and I'm just going to put this along the bottom. And so even if I don't end up dragging it, this will also help protect the wood, having that plastic between the pressure treated and the dirt. All attached. I didn't even use the holes here. I was going to use fender washers, and I just made my own hole. It's so easy to cut through. A little bit stronger than having that big hole. There we go. It worked out great because I got the small roll, which was 20 feet. And it's just about the right amount. Not much waste. Just finished the other side. I want to point out that I added this curved piece here and put a few screws. I set that way in there with the big diameter drill. So the head, those screws there, and I put one on the side. And then I just did every third one down here. And that's the extra. It's a 20-foot roll. I also want to point out screws. So I don't usually keep track, but I used about 150 of these stainless steel screws, 3-inch, and the strong drive, I used about 150 of these. The box is now done except for the lid. I put this latch in here, welded wire bottom. You get your eggs there. And I put in a roosting bar, just PVC. At least I wanted one thing that's lightweight. This is to keep the chickens from sleeping or hanging out in the nesting box. So for the night, you just close this bar, and it's all done from the outside. So pull up when you want them to nest, using this here, and you hook it onto something to keep it there. Then at night, you just drop the gate, and that should keep the birds out of there. Yes, it's a use of my conduit. Just flatten out the conduit, drill the hole, and use self-tapping screws. And then we're pivoting on our strong tie 1.5-inch galvanized screws. And then I have 1/8-inch stainless wire and a pulley. All right, I'm getting near done. Just need to put on the roofing. A lot of these dimensions are driven by the material. So these roofing panels are 25.5 inches. So that's why I made this part 50 inches so that 2 panels don't need to be cut. It's always good to have the factory edge because this is galvanized and the factory edge is protected by the galvanization process. If I cut it, it could rust on the cut. So I'm putting some caulking between here. Okay, now that I got the caulking on, time for the second piece. Okay. So one thing I should point out is I put this temporary board here with clamps, and it makes it so much easier. These panels don't slide down on you. The other thing is, even these are self-tapping screws. I'll show you the detail. These are really nice screws. So these are lifetime screws because they have this metal cap that protects the rubber. So that seats up against it. The rubber is protected from the sun. So and they're hot dip galvanized. So I'll be using, and the tip is it'll cut its own threads, but it's so much easier if you center punch it first. That's it. I'm just going to work my way up and then trim off the top. Okay, the roof is all done. Would point out, instead of using a official ridge cap, I just had an old HVAC vent pipe, galvanized, laying around, and I decided to put it to good use. So I just split it down the middle and just have that pipe there covering the ridge. That's it. All I need to do is mount these wheels and we are ready for our chicks. My wife decided to put a little pressure on me and got some baby chicks today. So they're living in this moving box right now, but they need a home, don't you, little chickies? The pressure is now on. I need to finish tomorrow. Ready for the wheels. So what I'm going to do with the wheels is I'm going to use this 5/8 inch steel, which I've cut to 8 inches. I drill it in here. The wheels are going to fit on to this. There we go. So I just cut a hole in the screen, just nipped away at it, made it 1.5 by 3.5. I'm sliding this guy in here. I think you now see where I'm going with this. That's going to slide in here. These wheels are going to pop on. Ready for the most important structural part. So this beam, I'm going to attach very rigidly to this frame member and this frame member. I'm going to use some strong tie hurricane ties and stick these here. I finished that other box. I just got a brand new 500 count box. The finishing touch is to put a ramp up to the nesting box, and it's looking pretty done. We are done. So it's all complete. I have 1/2 inch welded wire here, fastened with galvanized and stainless steel. I've got the latch here, the door. I got the emergency escape thing here. I've got the ramp, and I'm going to go around and demonstrate how we keep the hens from sleeping there at night. So at night we just lower this. During the day we lift it up. Okay. So down here I've got this plastic rail, protect the wood. Also we can slide it. We have our large Harbor Freight wheels. There's two key components. One is this axle here, and then one is the 4x4 posts. We have a tin roof with roofing screws, and then we have the nesting box. Nesting box opens like this. There's a slope there. The eggs roll down. We're going to put nesting material there. And then this is how we put the wheels on and off. So we take the wheel off. So we just use a little leverage to go down here. That's the normal position. When we want to put the wheel on, we raise this up. I'm going to drill a hole and drop a nail in there, as my neighbor suggested, but right now I'm just going to use hose clamps. There we go. Wheels attached. Lower it. That board right there is also wide enough so that I can put a screw jack under it if you don't want the leverage. And then this board goes on this structural screw, raises here, then we lift, and we're ready to rock and roll. Where do you want this thing, dear? It's all ready to go. Now, some of you I know are going to ask for plans. People always do. But I don't work with plans. I kind of like to design as I go and think about it and design on the fly. But if there's wide interest, I will have some plans drawn up.